Happy New Year, you wonderful firefighters. Thank you for being here for this. It's a turning point in the history of Fire Drill Fridays. Today marks a pivotal moment as we close this chapter of our virtual gathering. And we are going to embark on a new era, a new phase of collective action, and it's going to be very exciting. But this is also a moving moment for me. Now, I want to say that whether you're a seasoned firefighter or you're here for the first time, welcome, welcome. Fire Drill Fridays is where we build community, learn about the climate crisis, and take action to address it. Would you please, really, I want you to let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you're willing, share a bit about your Fire Drill Friday journey and what this community means to you. It will mean a lot to me if you do that. I love hearing from you. And would you also please share this stream with your friends? Ensure that this final Fire Drill Friday show makes the biggest splash yet. And as always, let's kick things off with good news. Last month at COP28 in Dubai, world leaders sent a resounding message. The era of fossil fuels is coming to an end. Now, let me be clear, there's still a huge amount of work to do. But the fact that fossil fuels were part of the discussion finally is a major, major milestone. World leaders very, very clearly acknowledged the indisputable fact that we need to shift away from fossil fuels to have a safe and livable future. Oil and gas executives, consider yourself on notice. We've got the wind in our sails to push for tangible, fair, funded plans to break free from fossil fuels. I think the tide is turning, so let's ride it. Now, closer to home, there's good news. In Los Angeles, the Neighborhood Land Trust, together with Redeemer Community Partnership and Stand LA, has purchased the Jefferson Drill site. Now, picture this, a place where dozens of polluting oil wells have operated within a mere 3 feet of the nearest home in South LA. Many, many people worked tirelessly for years to close it down. And guess what? They're not stopping there. They're rolling up their sleeves to give it a complete makeover, transforming it, dig this, into a park, a vibrant community space and haven for affordable housing. Their success is a testament to the power of organizing and a blueprint for shaping our communities with health and dignity for all. Yay. Here's to more triumphs in 2024. This is going to be a kick-ass year. And before we talk about what lies ahead, let's take a moment I want to reflect on the wild and incredible journey of Fire Drill Fridays. Now, it all started Labor Day weekend in 2019. I received a book. In fact, it was the galleys of a book. It hadn't even been published yet, that changed the trajectory of my life. And it came at a moment when I was deeply depressed about what was happening to the planet. The book I'm referring to was On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal by the remarkable Naomi Klein, whom you're going to meet today. She's my guest. Part of it was the way that Naomi wrote about the young Swedish climate activist, Greta Thunberg, who at 15 sparked a global movement of young people with a rallying cry that said, we have to act as if our house is on fire, because it is. Wow, this hit me. This really hit me hard and made me want to leave my comfort zone and act like Greta was doing. It was also, though, the way that Naomi wrote about climate science. It really brought home to me that fossil fuels were at the heart of the crisis and that time was running out. We need the wind and solar farms and electric vehicles and so forth, but we have to stop new drilling and fracking if we hope to turn things around. And it's Naomi that taught me this. And it was also how she wrote about the Green New Deal, which helped me understand its importance. And that in properly dealing with the climate crisis, we would also be solving the various social crises that face us, like inequality, jobs, threats to democracy, empathy, the health crisis. It was something about Naomi's words cut through the noise for me, illuminating the stark reality of climate science. Maybe it was that it was just the right moment for me, because I was really depressed and wanting to know what I should do. That for the first time, I truly absorbed the dire warnings coming from the scientists. And I also understood for the first time that the climate crisis is a reflection of practically all of the ills of our society. And if, as I said, if we get this transition to alternative, sustainable fuels right, it means a whole lot of the rest of our lives will be made better, fairer, healthier, and more democratic. Naomi's words hit me like a lightning bolt, and I knew I had to align my life and my actions with the urgent reality. So I closed the book and I immediately called my friend Annie Leonard, who at that time was Greenpeace USA's executive director. And she brought on other trusted allies and activists and Naomi herself into a conversation about what I should do, what it should look like. You know, we knew that people were becoming more aware and more outraged about the climate crisis. So our goal was to transform that concern into bold action. It wasn't to try to influence the government, because at that time Trump was in office. It was to try to build numbers of people who wanted to take action against the climate crisis at that time. Fire Drill Fridays roared to life that fall, 2019. We had weekly protests in DC where, together with many, many others, we got arrested for civil disobedience. In fact, I turned 82 in jail one Friday. I knew that would get a lot of attention. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to get a lot of attention. So people, well, I mean, I was thinking people are going to say, God, look, she's so old. If she can do it, I can do it. Come on, I'm going to do it. And it wasn't performative. It wasn't mere spectacle. We wanted to inspire people to step out of their comfort zones and act. And they did. They did. The story spread like wildfire. Thousands of people rallied, with over 600 arrests in peaceful civil disobedience. And what really excited me is they were mostly people who had never, ever attended a rally or engaged in civil disobedience. That's just what we hoped for. Talk about people power. And then when the COVID pandemic struck, Fire Drill Fridays adapted. We took our rallies online, with hundreds of thousands tuning in weekly to hear from frontline activists and experts, indigenous leaders and celebrities, elected officials. Our mission, again, was to educate, inspire, and mobilize for meaningful action. And we did just that. You did just that through social media, online petitions, calls to elected officials. Millions amplified demands for a cleaner, greener, healthier planet. And I'm so proud of what we accomplished together. Now, I've been told there was a little surprise from some extraordinary members of our community. We call them our super firefighters. I can't wait to see it. Let's roll it.
Hello, fellow firefighters.
My name is Lenora.
Hi there. My name is Frances Tauser.
My name is Joe D'Adamo from Baltimore, Maryland.
I'm Kathy in Lake Elsinore, California.
And I just found it very heartwarming to see so many people all tuning into the same place, all getting the same message about, the current state of our climate and the fact that there are people out there fighting to try to make this a better place.
In the battle for climate justice, it's very easy to feel that as one individual, what can I do? However, Jane Fonda and Fire Drill Fridays made it possible to think that everybody can do something to make a difference.
You have been an inspirational figure in sending the powerful message there is always strength in numbers when voting for politicians that are supportive of our planet.
I had been a long-time admirer of Jane Fonda's activism.
You and Lily Tomlin, two very strong women, always put a smile on my face whenever I see you together supporting the planet.
I appreciate that there's always a glimmer of hope with every call.
This was great fun, getting the chance to interact on Zoom with Jane, Greenpeace staff, and many of the other text volunteers who had become friends by this time.
It's so nice to know that we have people who are fighting for our climate, for our world, for the next generation.
From the bottom of my heart, I really, 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 really love Greenpeace and FDF.
Keep up the great job on Fire Drill Fridays at Greenpeace.
Thank you to everybody who's made Fire Drill Fridays possible, and I look forward to being part of whatever the next step is.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. I can't tell you what it means to me to hear directly from all of you. It really touches me, and you are truly what keeps me and this movement going. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's take that energy into what's ahead. In this make or break election year, it's time to step away from our screens and get back into our communities and take our activism to the next level. This is our last Fire Drill Fridays virtual show, because we're ready to channel all we've learned into deeper action. I want you to realize that the elections of 2024 are probably the most significant in human history, because their outcome is going to determine whether or not there's a livable democratic future for humankind. Really. Over the years, I've received gratitude for my activism, and my response is always, don't thank me, join me. And today I invite you, join me. Personally, I will do this all year. This is what I'm going to focus on all year. I'm going to focus on the election and the climate crisis, and I'd like you to join me. If you're feeling the weight of climate impacts, if you're fueled by science and justice, if you're a parent or a grandparent or caregiver, if you're young or old or eligible to vote or not, a seasoned activist or someone just waking up to the climate crisis, we need you. I'm like Uncle Sam. We need you. Seriously. Join us on firedrillfridays.com. Fill out the volunteer form that says, yes, you are ready to fight alongside us, okay? Fire Drill Fridays is a part of Greenpeace USA, and by joining Greenpeace's volunteer network, you'll have the chance to work side by side with me and thousands of others, rolling up our sleeves for the climate. You can also jump right into action also, signing up to write letters to climate voters in key districts. This is really important to do, and we can start right away. You know, I tell everybody who asks that the antidote to despair is action, and the secret to sustaining action is community. Power lies in unity and collective strength. That's why those we oppose hate when people come together and organize. And speaking of organizing, get ready for an empowering experience this summer with our Training to Win series, a virtual organizing boot camp hosted by yours truly, featuring top experts and movement leaders. This won't just be a passive learning, it'll be a dynamic journey to turn knowledge into real world impact to win on climate in November. Throughout the series, you won't just learn practical strategies, you'll be putting them into action in real time and discover how to lead others to amplify your impact. The best way to stay informed is by signing up as a Greenpeace volunteer and by following not only Fire Drill Fridays, but also Greenpeace USA on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you hang out online, okay? I'll be there trying to make sense of current events, issuing calls to action, and celebrating our victories. And you'll be hearing from me very soon, because I'm going I leave in a few days to go to Texas and Louisiana to document the untold story of the world's most polluting oil fields and out of control liquefied natural gas expansion. That's called LNG, liquefied natural gas. This is just going to be, I'm making a documentary about it, and it's a first step in a much larger effort to stop the massive, massive fossil fuel build out that's threatening our planet and wreaking havoc in the Gulf South communities. It's ruining people's health, their lives, their environment, and the entire coast. All the things that can keep sea level rises from invading those communities, everything there is being destroyed. If it's allowed to be built out, this area of our country will become the biggest carbon bomb in the world. Carbon bomb meaning the highest concentration of greenhouse gases and toxins anywhere else in the world. So that's a big one that I'm going to be covering, and you'll be hearing news about that. And if you're in California, you may have heard about another critical battle that we have ahead of us to keep oil drilling out of neighborhoods. We're going to be building a deeper on-the-ground organizing network, and I'll be hitting the streets. So stay tuned for more on that. This is just a taste of what we're going to be doing this year, and I can't wait to get out there and make a difference with you. And now I am honored and very moved to welcome back the person who set me on this path to begin with. This moves me a lot that she was here at the beginning and she's here now. I'd like to welcome the incredible Naomi Klein to our final Fire Drill Friday shows. Naomi is an award-winning journalist and an international best-selling author of 9 books, every one of them life-altering. Her books have been published in over 35 languages, including, you should get them all, No Logo, that was her first, put her on the map. Then there's the Shock Doctrine. Please read Shock Doctrine. It will teach you so much. This changes everything. No is not enough. On Fire, that's the one I've been talking about. And Doppelganger, which she just published this fall. It's so good. Naomi is a columnist for The Guardian, a professor of climate justice, and founding co-director of the Center for Climate Justice at the University of British Columbia. Welcome, Naomi. Thank you for being such a force for positive change in my life and in the world. Welcome.
Jane. Thank you, Jane. I am so moved to be here with you. I adore you. And I'm going to repeat to you the words that I said to you when we first met, which was, I believe, in 2007. It was in New Orleans. And it was after you had performed spectacularly in a production of the Vagina Monologues. And we were backstage, and I said, and you were talking to me about the Shock Doctrine and New Orleans and Hurricane Katrina, and you were just bubbling over with commitment and ideas, and you had a martini in one hand. And I said, Jane, life is full of disappointments, and you are not one of them. And I continue to just feel that way about everything that you do. And I just want to share with your incredible community that you have built over these almost 5 years now, a little piece of history. I have the email that you sent me on September 1st, 2019. I really do consider it a little piece of history. And you said, just as you were just sharing, that you'd read the book over Labor Day weekend. You said, okay, I want to camp on the Capitol from the end of this September until after the 2020 election, 15 months, to demonstrate that we must elect a president, Congress, and Senate that will pass the Green New Deal on day one. It's the best way that I can think of as a celebrity to put the crisis front and center, rain, sleet, or snow. Do you think this is a good idea? I'm talking to Annie Leonard because Greenpeace has the experience and the lawyers to help me do it right. So you are the reader that every writer dreams of. I mean, beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of when I sent you that book. I always send you early copies of my book. having just no idea what it could lead to. And yeah, I really want to stress that what you were saying in this email was that it was Greta that really inspired you, and the way she also took in the enormity of the climate crisis and knew she had to change her life, and that kick-started a movement. And you said, I'm going to do the same thing. And you did that. Now, of course, the Greenpeace lawyers told you that if you did camp out on Capitol Hill, your protest would not last 15 months. It would last one day because you would promptly be arrested and they wouldn't let you do that. So you came up with this strategy that would be lasting to do the Fire Drill Friday actions, and got lots of people arrested, including me. Thank you very much. And I remember, I just want to share another memory, which is, being in DC after you'd been doing it for a few weeks. And I was just like eavesdropping on an interview that you were doing. There were lots of journalists there. It was already a phenomenon. And you were talking about feeling integrated, that feeling that you were where you needed to be, doing what you needed to be. And there's something really, really powerful about that, because I think so much of us, we spend so much of our life feeling torn between our beliefs, values, and the way this world functions. So I just wonder if you could share a little bit about that, because I think that's such a model for what we'll never feel, that integration every minute of every day. But the more minutes we have when we feel it, the better we're doing, right?
I remember vividly the feeling that I had, and I'd never really had it before, and I was already in my 80s. Here in this country, we probably, those of you who are watching, I'm sure that like me and like Naomi, you have watched in your life documentaries of brave people, whether it was Martin Luther King or the young Black kids sitting in on the lunch counters in Mississippi, or whatever. And you've watched these incredibly brave people, and you've thought to yourself, God, if I was ever in that situation, would I have the guts to stand up and take it, the hoses and the dogs and the beatings and the whatever was coming to them? You have your documentary moment is now. And that was my documentary moment. When I was, the first time that I was arrested that day on the steps of the Capitol, it was like my deepest values, my core being, and my body, we were all united in one. It was a great feeling. But there was another thing that that continues to mean a lot to me, and it was taught to me by Annie Leonard. When I first moved to DC, it was in the beginning of October. The first thing she said was, we have to gather together all of the movement leaders here in DC who focus on fossil fuels and bring them in as part of this effort. We didn't even know what it was called yet. We didn't have a name for Fire Drill Fridays. And we had an all-day meeting it was Friends of the Earth and Reverend Yearwood, the hip hop generation, and Oil Change International. Was all the big groups that were really focused on fossil fuels. It's called Movement Manners, I discovered. And Annie said something that I'll never forget to me. She said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I realized then that if she hadn't done that, and then a day later we met with all the young climate activists and brought them into, so they felt they were a part of it. They helped us strategize. It meant the world. Otherwise, it would have been an aging movie star coming to DC, and doing a performance, and it would have been resented. But because of what Annie taught me, when we started, everyone was with us, all the other organizations and activists. And that to me was an enormous and very important lesson. So, yeah.
You brought this huge spotlight. I mean, and you just said, come on in, everybody, come, and that included me. So I can't thank you enough for just the generosity of spirit, and also for sharing that lesson. I think it's one of the most important lessons of organizing is, it's easy to think you're the first person to have an idea and just go out there alone and step on toes, and and then you just mess up before you even really start. And so that work of mapping what's out there, how can we move together, is the first thing we need to do. Mariam Kaba talks about that in the context of prison abolition. Is the first thing to ask is like, who else is doing this thing? Can I help them? And so you modeled that so spectacularly.
Well, the very first time that I was arrested and we were in the holding pen, and it wasn't just me, there were 2 whole cells filled with people, all of whom represented other organizations, by our powers come, along with my granddaughters. That's really great. But I want to say it again. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So Naomi, the world was different then, wasn't it? Donald Trump was president, for one thing. There was a surge in young people calling for a Green New Deal. There was a blue wave that had swept climate champions like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez into office. What's changed since then? What have we won or lost? And what do you see as the next frontier in our fight?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. I heard this phrase once in the context of the collapse of the Soviet Union, that sometimes history moves in dog years, like you pack 7 years of history into 1 year. And I feel like we've had an era of those types of years really since 2019.
Right.
You had the huge hopes of the Democratic Party primary last time around, where we seemed to have our pick of climate champions because of all of this mobilization. Then we had the pandemic shutting everything down, the racial justice uprisings in the spring and summer of 2020, the largest protests in the history of the United States, Trump losing the election, thank God, in 2020, then January 6th, another unprecedented event, the invasion of Ukraine, spiraling inflation. And I think, we are still, I certainly feel like that velocity of we are still in fast forward history. Hamas's October 7th attacks in Israel, now the endless bombardment of Gaza, and of course the surging far right around the world. And I think that's really important. You have people tuning in from around the world, mostly in the US, but not exclusively. And this phenomenon of the right riding really a wave of momentum. It's true in France, it's true in Italy, it's true in Italy. So a lot is happening, and the only mystery is why you haven't aged at all, Jane, and the rest of us look completely ragged. So now, in terms of what we have learned, okay, one thing that I think it's worth taking stock of is that when you started this, when the Green New Deal was put on the agenda, and when the student climate strikes happened, that was pre-pandemic. And so when we talked about wanting leaders to treat an emergency like an emergency, we didn't really have a historical memory of what that might look like, right? But we have seen that. We've seen our governments act with urgency. We saw it in the early months of the pandemic when everything was changing at the policy level. We even saw that kind of mobilization in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where suddenly there are sanctions and there's just this flurry of policymaking. Something I think we have learned from this fast forward period of history is that because climate breakdown is a slower kind of violence, it's hard for it to compete with crises that take lives very, very rapidly, like wars, like when bombs are falling and tanks are rolling and viruses are spreading globally. And I think that's precisely why, and this has been true of the organizing model of Fire Drill Fridays from the start, is why there needs to be a holistic analysis that doesn't ask people to choose between caring about war, caring about racism, caring about public health, and caring about climate, that actually works to connect the dots. And this is what you've been doing with your book, with all of these sessions, is okay, well, what connection are we talking about this week? And so I think that lesson is really, I hope, now at the center of climate movement organizing. And I think we're choosing battles precisely because they are intersectional. So that's an important lesson. Yeah. What do you think? Do you feel that lesson has been taken on board at last?
By some activists, not by the public at large. You know, this fall I did an extensive speaking tour around the country, and every time I said, if there was no patriarchy, if there was no racism, etc., there'd be no climate crisis, people gasp. I said it once on the Kelly Clarkson show. People are fascinated by that notion, but it's not widely enough understood. You know, I can't remember who the writer was that talked about the climate crisis like Russian nesting dolls. You know, you open up one and then there's another doll. And that's what the climate crisis is. It's all of those inequality, lack of democracy, all of those things led to a climate crisis. I mean, when you really think about it, it's so phenomenal that there are things like Homo sapiens, that we are actually alive on a planet that has been for millennia hospitable to us. And that is ending. I mean, human beings with all our brilliance are destroying the very thing that allows us to exist. It's crazy. We're too smart, but that's what we're doing. You know, E.O. Wilson, the wonderful biologist from Harvard, he said once, God granted the gift of intelligence to the wrong species. Should have been granted to creatures like whales or dolphins with no thumbs, vegetarians with no thumbs. I mean, it's crazy that we have done this to ourselves. I can't remember why I started to go on this rant. That's a problem with age, is that I start a sentence and I can't remember the point I was trying to make. But yeah, intersectionality, yeah. They're totally connected, but not enough people understand that yet. And also, climate crisis exacerbates democracy's, the things that are attacking democracy. It exacerbates inequality. It exacerbates racism. All of those things just get worse. It's the chaos that gives rise to despots all around the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I often say that, you know, whatever was bad before climate chaos just becomes unbearable when you have it layered on top of it. And also, you know, there is a logic that sees a hierarchy of humanity, that sees some lives as being worth more than others. And that is the logic of patriarchy. It's the logic of white supremacy, and it's the logic of warfare. It is the logic of the climate crisis, because it's only
the logic of immigration. That's the kind of thinking that's leading to these terrible immigration policies.
Exactly. So I think that's why we do have this new generation of intersectional climate leaders. It is an intergenerational movement, and that this is really related to this next election. I know that you're pivoting to just the terrifying importance of this election year. You know, when I look at who the climate champions that were, you know, that came into office since in this new era of organizing, they're all intersectional leaders, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Ayanna Pressley, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush,
Summer Lee, yeah.
Yes, Summer Lee and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and they care about climate and they care about all of these other injustices. And because of that, because they also care about war, because they care about any place where human life is being treated as cheap and disposable, they are facing a lot of money to try to unseat them in the primaries and in this election cycle. So we need to be defending our climate champions. And that's what I've really been thinking a lot about ahead of talking to you today. People like Pramila Jayapal, you know, like it is the people who connect the dots who are being targeted because they connect the dots, right? And we as a climate justice movement need to have their backs. We need to be making sure that not only do they get back in office, but they come with friends, that there's more of them. You know, think about you know, looking back at that email from you, Jane, and this sort of pledge, let's get a Green New Deal from day one. Okay, we didn't get a Green New Deal, but we did get the biggest climate infrastructure investments in history. And that was because of this pressure, every bit of it, right? I mean, Joe Biden is a centrist Democrat. When he was in the Obama administration, he wasn't pushing for big climate change policies that connected the dots. He did that because he was under movement pressure. Right. But he also had pushback because of that very, very, very slim majority that the Democrats had, where Joe Manchin had way too much power. So imagine how much closer it could have been to the original vision of the Green New Deal if we had had more climate champions. And so I know people are feeling demoralized, particularly younger people who are just horrified at the violence that they're seeing in Gaza. We can't afford to be demoralized. We need more climate champions in office.
That's right. We have to realize that, you know, an alternative to Biden is fascism. It's either Biden or fascism.
And it's the same people who are the climate champions who are fighting against that militarism, who are fighting for peace. Exactly. Yeah. Tell me more about how you're thinking about this, because, you know, you were just saying before I came on that you're working on this new documentary about LNG expansion. You're not under any illusions about the negative things that this administration has done. So how with those sort of with that clear-eyed view are you thinking about this presidential election?
Well, you know, like most of us, I've been disappointed in what Biden has done compared to what he promised he would do when he was running. I'm not happy at all, but you know, I'm not going to marry him. I just want him to be reelected because the alternative is so horrible. I mean, the alternative is Donald Trump has been very clear about what he's going to do if he's elected. Drill, drill, drill. You know, he wants to be a tyrant, and he will do everything he can. And so that's what we're up against. You know, this is not 2000. You remember when Bush and Gore were running against each other? My kids voted for Ralph Nader. Now, I don't want to blame my kids for why Gore didn't win. Maybe Gore did win and we just don't know it because he gave up so soon. But imagine how different it would have been if Gore had won and not George Bush. There would not have been a war in the Mideast. All kinds of bad things would not have happened. We'd be in a much better position right now vis-a-vis the climate crisis. Too many people gave a protest vote and voted for either Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, or Ralph Nader. We can't do that now. We don't have, well, let's wait 4 more years and we can do it better next time. There isn't 4 more years to wait. We don't have that kind of time when we're talking about the climate crisis. So there's no protest vote. Vote for the guy who can be pressured, and that is Joe Biden. We can pressure him. That's why I'm going down to make this documentary in the Gulf. It's why I write him letters all the time. It's why we do what we're doing, because this is a guy who we can pressure. That's been proven. The future is at stake. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Listen, let me ask you something, Naomi. In your latest book, Doppelganger, you delve into the idea of doppelgangers or doubles. That's what doppelganger means, not just for individuals, but whole societies. How does this relate to the stakes in this election?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, as a film person, Jane, you know, cinema loves a doppelganger. It loves the idea that we all kind of have an evil twin out there somewhere, and I've watched so many of these films and read all these doppelganger novels. And really, it's often a metaphor for fascism. It's often a way to kind of get at that fear that we have, so many of us have inside of us, that our whole society can flip into its evil twin. And it has in the past, right? We know we have, you know, when suddenly, you know, the nice neighbor down the street joins the mob. And of course, Black people in the United States have lived with that kind of fascism, and know how quickly a society can flip into its evil twin. And so you think about the films of Jordan Peele and how he taps into that sort of sense of menace, that real sense of menace. You know, I've been in social movements for long enough that I have friends in India, in Italy, and Israel who say it's happened here. It has already tipped. We have tipped into the worst version of ourselves. I'm afraid of our neighbors. And open societies can become closed societies. So that to me is what's really at stake. I have my own critiques, and I don't want to spend too much time going into it. I'm focused on getting more climate champions in office. I think we need to do that in every country, because they are also the people who are standing up against militarism, who are standing up, for affordable housing. So in the United States, I think this is really what Trump represents, the shadow side of our societies that's always lurking and waiting to take over, and that has taken over in the past. It's the racism, the vigilante violence, the state violence, the McCarthyism. And when societies flip into their doppelganger evil twins, any room for dissent shuts down. So we need to care about this, because of course we should care about a threat of fascism. Of course we should care about a president who talks about the blood of a country being poisoned by immigration. We also need to care about it from a climate perspective, because all the work that we are talking about, it that you have done, that I have done, that so many courageous activists have done, it relies on an open society. Yes, you got arrested, but you were able to get out of jail. You didn't get locked away indefinitely, as is happening in countries around the world. We can't do this work if we don't have freedom of speech, if we don't have freedom to protest. It doesn't work within authoritarianism. And so we can't be casual about the difference between living in an open society and a closed society.
Absolutely.
That's what's at stake.
Yeah, it's already happening. In I think about 20 states, if you protest next to a fossil fuel infrastructure, it's you get arrested, and you don't get let out right away. I mean, it's a felony. Greenpeace is being sued for $300 million by an oil company, Canadian oil company, I think it is, because they're saying that they cause violence at Standing Rock. It's a complete lie, but this is what they're trying to do, scare us out of taking positions by, yeah, it's already happening.
It's already happening, and and like everything else, it doesn't happen equally. Indigenous water defenders, land defenders have been fighting against pipelines, have faced this criminalization, that brutality, that violence, and always have. And it's
here in California, it's the people poor people, working class people, Black people, Hispanic people, Indigenous people who live in communities around California where oil wells are right next to their homes and schools and playgrounds. They finally won a setback law, which forbids oil wells from coming within 3,200 feet. The oil companies are trying to overturn it. I mean, there you go. Try to do something good and they'll try to overturn it. And if they win here, it's going to go national. I mean, we're fighting this with everything we have. Listen, yeah. Naomi, you also—
One thing I would just add that, I heard Alicia Garza, one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, say about another presidential election that you said you're not voting for your boyfriend or your husband. No. And what Alicia Garza said is we're voting for the terrain on which to fight, right? And your audience is an audience of organizers, and that really is the question: what is the terrain on which we will fight? And not all terrains are equal when it comes to fighting. So we need to protect our ability to fight, which we cannot take for granted.
Protect our terrain. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
You examined how conspiracy culture escalates during crises, drawing on themes from your wonderful book, Shock Doctrine. In these moments, conspiracies abound and corporations often profit, but you've also explored how we could seize on moments that destabilize the status quo to push for a better, more fair, more equitable society, especially in this post-COVID era. How can we best position ourselves to do that?
I write in Doppelganger that right-wing conspiracy culture gets the facts wrong, but the feelings right. And by which I mean that, they're making up their facts, but they're speaking to real fears a true sense that the system is rigged, right? And then they kind of pivot it towards, wild conspiracies about QAnon, and then it ends up really being about scapegoating the most vulnerable. So we need to speak to those feelings, those real feelings that the system is rigged, but we need to tell the truth about who is rigging it. It's not a conspiracy of, people out to drain babies' bloods or whatever it is. It's just this system that rewards profit at all costs. Fossil fuels are very, very profitable. It's a lot of a less sexy theory, but that is actually what is standing in our way. That's who funds Joe Manchin. That is who is underwriting these attacks on our climate champions. But we don't just do it with fear, right? We need, like, where they pivot to scapegoating the vulnerable, we need to offer people hope. We need to offer people a vision of a future, a horizon where everybody sees themselves represented. Where nobody is treated as disposable, where nobody is nowhere is a sacrifice zone. So we need to kind of simultaneously tell the truth about how messed up this system is while painting a picture of how it could really be different. So that's our job. And we have to be realistic that it isn't going to be Joe Biden who's going to deliver that future. That's the future that we're going to fight for on that terrain that we protect.
Yeah. I like the way you've put it. No, Joe Biden won't deliver that, but he creates the terrain on which we can fight for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your book, On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal, that was the catalyst that woke me up to the intersections between climate and racial, gender, and economic justice, to the fact that we wouldn't have a climate crisis without racism and patriarchy. And because of that, we focused a lot of our fire drill rallies and shows on exposing and exploring these connections, okay? So one term that I've heard you discuss that drove this concept home for me is climate barbarism instead of climate denial, and how white supremacy is completely inseparable from that mindset. Can you explain that?
Well, I really believe that, there are still climate change deniers on the right, but I don't buy it. I think it's not possible to really be alive in 2024 and to see the storms and the wildfires and experience the heat and the fact that there's no snow and the rest of it, and not realize that we are in an era of very rapid change. And I think that a lot of the fascism, the resurgent fascism, so much of which is focused on borders, right, and of controlling the border, really is like, we should understand that as a kind of eco-fascism, a way of responding to the realities of climate disruption and the fact that this is one of the drivers, one of the reasons people are being forced to leave. And in the future, it's going to be playing even more of a role. All of the research points to that. And saying, no, our job is just to protect our own, right? Fascism always creates a group of protected insiders and then dehumanizes the other and creates rationales for exterminatory violence or just allowing people to drown and die. And so I'm less concerned about about climate change denial than I am by these ideologies that are rationalizing the fortressing of our hearts, our borders, in the face of the realities of the climate crisis. And that's the alternative that we need to build. That's the stakes of this movement, Jake, and this moment, right? It's a different world than when you started this, but we are different too. I think we have built those intersectional connections, a deeper analysis, and I think a lot of us get what the stakes are. We can't silo our issues anymore.
Right. So for the antidote, speaking to the Fire Drill Friday community out there, how do we and the movement at large integrate what we've learned around these connections into how we think and into our actions as we move forward? How do we get concrete about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning of what did you do when you started this? The first thing you did is you found out what other people were doing, and you listened to them and you asked them what would be most useful. So I think that the most important thing that we can do to integrate these learnings is not try to do it alone. Is pool our power, our resources, and work collectively, because that's where our power is. So find out what's going on. Luckily, this is being hosted by Greenpeace, and Greenpeace is standing at the ready to put people to work collectively.
And they're everywhere.
Everywhere. Don't reinvent the wheel. We do not have time for that. We don't have time to waste energy needlessly. Yeah, so I think that that's the most important thing is join a group, and Greenpeace is ready. There are lots of great groups that people could get involved in. Protect those climate champions. Even if they're not your representative, look at who has been fighting for a really radical, transformational Green New Deal vision. See what kind of primary fight they're in and support them. Yeah, I think that'll keep us pretty busy, frankly, if we do all of that.
Mhm.
You know, APAC alone is spending $100 million just to unseat the squad. So we've got to have their backs. One thing, you know,
APAC is $100 million to defeat them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, you know, this conversation's gotten really serious. And I hope that people feel really, really proud of the work that they have done, that you have done together as a community over these 4.5 years. It's been amazing to me to just see the commitment through the pandemic, through all of these disruptions, staying focused, staying together, now getting ready for this election year, being very clear on the stakes. And really, I think we need intergenerational movements. That was the thing that excited me most when I got that fateful email from you, Jane. You know, young people were organizing, but the idea that there was going to be, I mean, I remember because Greta was in New York that September, and I was telling her and her father about you and fire. I mean, they don't want to just have this dumped on them. They want company, and they want intergenerational wisdom and guidance. But this generation is hungry to connect the dots. You know, Gen Z, they're not interested in silos. It's all about connections, and they deserve our trust and support. And strong movements, like strong ecosystems, are diverse. So yeah, that's all that's on my mind. That, and just wanting to say again, Jane, that life is full of disappointments, and you aren't one of them. And I feel really, really honored to have been on this journey in some small way with you over these years. I've never seen anybody who just integrates knowledge and action and morality in the way that you have. You have your whole life. You've taken so much stick for it. But people have seen it, and having that model for us of what it looks like, and striving for that integration that you described so movingly and so beautifully at the beginning. It's like, that's how I want to live my life. I want to be like you, Jane. Thank you.
Oh, God. I love you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. It moves me that this is like a sweet full circle with you at the beginning, and in this change of pace for Fire Drill Fridays that you're present. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, Naomi. And I hope that we're standing side by side on the front lines many times in this coming year.
You know we will be.
Thank you.
See you out there. Thank you, Jane. Thanks, everybody.
Oh my gosh, you firefighters. I've thought a lot about this final episode send off. And honestly, when we pivoted to online activism in 2020, none of us could have foreseen what would happen. You know, if we're looking at the numbers, listen to this: 140 shows, 170 guests, 12 million views, tens of thousands of online actions taken. It's been quite a run, right? We've been busy, and we've celebrated some really significant wins along the way. National and local leaders taking steps in the right direction. More friends and families understand the true scale of what we face. And you, I know you are ready for more. You've heard from experts and activists, and you know what's next. And because you know the drill, to make change, we have to take action. And this time we're going to do it, and we have to dig really deep. And we have to do more than we've ever done before. Good news is we've got just the opportunity for you to get started. You know, as I mentioned, Greenpeace USA is launching a fun, highly effective letter writing campaign to get out the climate vote in key districts. And, you know, don't just think that the election all matters next November. There are primaries all this year, all in different states. It's March in California is our primary. So highly effective letter writing campaign to get out the climate vote is very important to start now. And don't forget to do this because the primaries are coming up. And I want to introduce you to somebody who's been producing all these Fire Drill Friday shows. It's Valerie Love from Greenpeace USA. Valerie, tell us more about how you can get involved.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jane. And hey, all you firefighters. I am just trying to pull myself together. I don't know about you, but I've been crying through about half of this show. I've been so moved, so inspired. You know, Naomi and Jane, what an absolutely dynamic, powerful duo. And yeah, Jane, you inspire me constantly just to be the best version of myself, to integrate more fully, to skill up, get better at everything that I'm doing. And you know, figure out how to make more of a difference. So just pulling myself together. But I do want to say too, this is a full circle moment for me as well. I don't know if you remember this, Jane, but the first and only other Fire Drill Friday show that I spoke on, it was in 2022. It was election season, and I was on to talk about, you guessed it, letter writing. So I remember I thought it was the most amazing thing that the Jane Fonda had said my name in introducing me. And I shared it with my friends and family. The email subject line was Jane Fonda and me. And then, of course, I invited them to write letters with us because that's what we're all about. But I was so proud. And then little did I know, just a few months later, I would become the Fire Drill Fridays director, and we would be working side by side together. And of course, in this amazing Fire Drill Friday firefighter community. So it's truly been the honor of a lifetime, and I'm really excited for the next chapter together. So here I am again to tell you about Greenpeace USA's Build the Climate Vote letter writing program, back by popular demand for 2024. You know, in 2016, 10 million people who said that they cared about the environment didn't vote. And we all lived through the painful consequences of what happened there. And then in 2020, climate voters came out in record numbers, and we moved the country forward on climate. So now our job is really to prove that climate voters are a reliable, organized voting bloc that can wield power in elections. We know, and this whole conversation has been about how this election is so critical, is a decisive moment for our climate and our democracy, and how we need climate champions in office who will fight alongside of us. So I invite all of you to join thousands of others of volunteers across the country to write personalized letters to climate voters in key races. So here's how it works. I have a printed letter right here. These letters have a scorecard right here that inform voters on the climate positions of different candidates in the primaries at this point. And they also have a blank spot, and this is where you will write your own personalized message using research-backed language that we'll provide, and you can, again, personalize it in your own words, but using that research-backed language so that we are driving home the importance of voting and boosting turnout. You can print your own letters, or if you don't have a home printer, we will mail you a packet. So we will teach you how to do it. We host virtual letter writing parties so we can all write letters together online. We can coach you on how to host your own letter writing party with your friends and family. I promise we are here to support you and make sure that you are successful. Personalized letters have been shown to be one of the most effective tactics in boosting turnout, and scorecard mail is quite effective in persuasion. Plus, it's fun, it's easy, it's a great way to make a difference, so it's a win-win-win. We're launching this program next week. So there will be a kickoff call next week for the primary cycle. So please do join the kickoff call. You can sign up at firedrillfridays.com. And we need every single one of you to win on climate in 2024. Right. So thank you, thank you. Can't wait to see you there. And back to you, Jane.
Thanks, Valerie, for bringing people together in meaningful action and for the invaluable support. Thank you. Thank you for your support these many Fire Drill Fridays. I really appreciate it, Valerie. And I can say from experience that Greenpeace USA Volunteer Network is an extraordinary community to be a part of. So firefighters, before you close this video and start your weekend, please visit firedrillfridays.com. Sign up to write letters and say, yes, I'm ready to fight alongside Greenpeace for this next evolution. And don't forget to keep your eyes out for our upcoming Training to Win series this summer. I can't wait. Join me and top organizing experts and movement leaders to skill up for 2024 electoral season. You're going to learn research-backed techniques to influence hearts and minds, mobilize voters to get to the polls, and enlist others to amplify your impact. And beyond practical skills, you'll become part of a powerful community, a network, connecting and supporting each other and turning information into action. Whether you're new or a seasoned organizer, this series will offer a space to build, lead, and win together. So stay tuned for updates by following Greenpeace USA social channels. I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every guest who shared their experience, their passion, their expertise, and wisdom with us. And thanks to the phenomenal Fire Drill Friday team for their often unseen but critical work to put the show on month after month. And of course, a special thanks to you firefighters. You are what makes it all worth it, for being the heart and soul of this incredible journey over the last 4 years. Get ready for the next adventure. I'll see you on the front lines.